All right, I am happy to be joined with Damon Michaels. He's the co-founder, chief operating officer, and director of Mydecine. Damon, how are things?
Things are great, Chad. How are you? It's
I
been a
know
little while, but it's good to be talking with you again.
I know I'm doing great, and yeah, it has been quite a while, obviously, since we last connected. But I know the markets have been a little flat over the last couple of months related to the actual industry itself. But I'd like to just sit down, get a chance to get caught up to speed with everything that's going on, because from what I hear from a lot of companies right now, industry continues to advance at a rapid pace.
Yeah, I mean, as we all know, right? The old saying, "The calm before the storm."
Yeah.
I know over here at Mydecine, let alone what other companies have brewing in the background, there's going to be some great things happening, some great news coming out, especially from an investment point of view, shareholder point of view, of some things to really hold strong to the backbone of these companies, including ours, that are really going to show a lot of prominence.
Yeah.
And get a lot of people very excited about the future of the psychedelic industry and the growth of it. So,
well, speaking of great news, this week you announced that you received approval to significantly expand your cultivation capabilities at the CGMP facility in Canada. So this announcement means the increased cultivation will also allow Mydecine to move more efficiently, study the medical utility of psilocybin compounds. So break it down for me. What does this mean for your investors moving forward as this expands?
sure, yeah, it means many things actually. It sounds like it's a small a headline, but it's actually quite extraordinary. For one, we have the capability, the legal capability to research mushrooms, psilocybin mushrooms, in a legal environment because through a university lab partner in Canada, we're underneath the Health Canada Dealers One Schedule, or Health Canada Schedule One Dealers license. That gives us that carte blanche access to do all the things to make this a viable product in medicine for us to research. Specifically, how it's really important to Mydecine is that as we go after, the things that we announced in another recent press release around the different novel drug candidates that we're developing around MYCO 001 all the way down through MYCO 004. MYCO 001 is to purify isolate from natural fungal sources to mirror the synthetic version, which is, of course, needed for our own internal supply chain that we're developing for clinical trials development, drug development, and of course, our own production. But that, of course, could lead into collaboration with other research groups, other universities, other companies that are trying to go down the similar path that we might be able to work with and supply to them as well. So it could be exciting as that develops.
How are talks with other, do you have a lot of ongoing conversations with other companies in the space about, I guess, uniting somewhat, obviously doing your own thing, but at the same time too, building relationships amongst other companies within the space?
Yeah, I mean, we're wide open here at Mydecine to at least have those exploratory conversations and see what we could do to progress the industry as a whole, because we know that we're going to be all climbing this uphill battle against industries like big pharma, et cetera, that it's going to be very challenging, especially from a lobbying point of view, the legislation point of view, all these things that are going to kind of fall into place. So we know that working together in unity as much as we possibly can without, crossing over anything that would be conflicting around, IP or whatever else it might be, I think is a major benefit. But we're just trying to explore those things now. Obviously, when those things come to fruition, everybody's going to know about it, whoever that might be and whatever project we might be working on. But definitely excited and always open to have those conversations. And unlike, where we've seen other companies in our industry is just completely closed off to the world, and you don't really hear from them ever until something that's breakthrough takes place.
Yeah. When you look at your research and the expansion of this cultivation capability center in Canada, what is it specifically that you're looking to uncover with this research?
Sure. So in Canada, regardless, we're trying to actively go after a few things off the bat once the mushrooms arrive in Canada from Jamaica. Right off the bat, what is the best practices that we could develop around extraction, around purification, by turning these different active compounds that we're finding within these mushrooms into isolate compounds that, once again, either mirror synthetic psilocybin, or we can create and put into production scale the synthetic versions of all these other actives, let alone psilocin as well, that could have a lot of potential value and benefit in the world of pharmacology in general, to adapt to new medicine as we move this thing forward. right off the bat, so far, we're initially looking at the mushroom batches that we've taken in, that we've extracted, we purified, and we tested at the lab. So far, we've been able to identify and characterize many of these other active compounds separate from psilocybin and psilocin that, of course, we have not seen before. So this initially shows that there's some possible entourage effect taking place, similar to what we saw in the cannabis industry. But these other active compounds could have easily, have the potential to lead to other non-psychedelic medicine or other unique indications separate from the research that we're conducting on specifically around PTSD and addiction, of course.
So help me better understand as we learn more about your narrative that you're trying to build in your business model. So how does this tie in to the research you're doing in Canada with your cultivation facility in Jamaica? Because I'm curious to know, and I've heard this a few times, and I would like to learn, like, what's the difference, say, between cultivating a site versus importing from, say, Jamaica?
Sure. Well, of course, the dynamic that we have going on there is a very special one. Jamaica being the only environment where psilocybin mushrooms or psychedelic mushrooms are legal to a degree, of course, where you could, of course, cultivate them. You could have them on hand. You could process them. You could sell them without any issue from the government. But of course, down there, Jamaica is just one of the most incredible places of fertility. When it comes to all the soil that they have, they have over 100 types of soil in Jamaica, Shad. In the United States, I think we have around 9 dominant soil types. So it's quite incredible. Obviously, it has to do with the aquifers, volcanic activity in the past, and all these different things. So because of that, all the different plants and all the different things that are growing in Jamaica, let alone the mushrooms, the fungal component is incredibly a lot more vast, especially from a dynamic of genetic species. So working with our ongoing relations and operations that we have with our Jamaica team to cultivate, harvest, and export psilocybin mushrooms or psychedelic mushrooms to our R&D lab in Canada, we have the ability to cultivate on site, but that gives us, of course, but that still gives us the instant access that we need to conduct the R&D and experiment and run in-house analytics to test all the unique types of psilocybin and non-psilocybin containing mushroom species, while still taking all the unique genetics that are coming from Jamaica, whether they're in the production batches, the kilos that we're having shipped up, or they're in tissue culture or spore print samples that we could then take and then exemplify within the lab environment to study, their chemotype, their chemical profile for whatever purposes we might feel that are necessary. I'll elaborate a little bit further and give everybody a little insight. We're going to be potentially pairing that with the AI division at our lab in University in Canada, and hopefully from there we could create predictive analytics. Because there's a lot of different chemicals involved, right? Once again, it's not just psilocybin, it's not just psilocin. We've already defined and characterized and cataloged and classified a lot of these other compounds. And not only the psychedelic mushrooms, but the functional ones too play a very significant role. So what does this mean as these chemicals are independent versus what does it mean as they're synergistic? So the only way for us to really speed up that process is using predictive analytics and algorithms through artificial intelligence that we're going to be adapting into our research programs as well, just to figure out what specific unique molecules or what specific formulations can target different things to help with overall homeostasis, vitality, in general, health and wellness as we go down that path a little bit further.
Well, I was unaware of the amount of ingredients within the soil, obviously in Jamaica. So when you look at Canada as a whole and the way it produces cannabis, do you see the same thing happening when it comes to cultivation in Jamaica as this industry expands more?
As far as cultivation in Canada, it's just going to elaborate further and just have more open access.
As far as cultivation,
I guess rephrase the question a little bit.
Do you see more companies, cultivating more in Jamaica and importing a lot of their product into both the US and Canada, given, like you said, the current conditions and how they're a lot more favorable?
I mean, for now, it makes sense, right? It's the only real way you could do it legally. And it's not like we're just shipping mushrooms from Jamaica because it's legal environment there. Once again, because of our special license that we have in Canada, it allows us to import and have a safe environment to bring those to. I would love to bring these psilocybin mushrooms, psychedelic mushrooms, to our other laboratory in Denver, where we're doing a lot of other mycology research, but we don't have a DEA license there for us to focus on. We're actively going after one, but we don't have that quite in place. Of course, the more access, the better when it comes to any research. But luckily, we have that environment. If other companies, facilities, research organizations have the ability, the legal ability to import mushrooms into their facility to do their own research, I mean, that's why not, right? It's the only supply chain. You're able to get a vast array of genetics from Jamaica itself. You don't need to, pick it apart from different parts of the world. It's all really centralized. It's incredible, how it worked, just by happenstance. So luckily, we have this situation set up. We have an incredible team down there. We have an awesome operation, supply chain. Everything is really worked out to the best of our ability so far to that regard.
Is it difficult to obtain like a license? Like what's the parameters, I guess, involved in something like that?
Yeah, it's not easy. I know a lot of companies are definitely trying to target going after a Health Canada license. It's a lot more challenging to get a DEA approved license because usually with the DEA, it's kind of piecemeal, where you could either get a specific license for research, another specific license attachment, for import or export, or for production or for sale, et cetera. With the Health Canada license that we have, it's essentially all encompassing. We could sell, transfer, export, research, do manufacturing, literally everything under the sun through this license, obviously within reason. So we're very lucky to have that. I do know that the university partner that we're working with, and the people that obtained the license initially, it took them 11 years to acquire it. So let alone it being, somewhat of a challenging process to get, it's also the time, as you know, within any bureaucracy, how long it takes to actually get federal government papers. But it's not just the license, Shad. It's what the license is attached to. And that license with our partner laboratory in Canada, I mean, it's a multi-$100 million facility with the best world-class researchers, the best equipment you could possibly imagine for us to really do the ins and outs, A to Z research that we need to do to conduct the initial studies of course, mushrooms from a cultivation point of view, what it takes to take those chemicals and turn them into manufactured products for specific purposes, being able to process them and bring that to clinical trial data and to produce all the data that we can run through. So there's a lot that license is attached to that a lot of people kind of forget. They're like, oh, we'll just get a license and then operate our business as such. No, there's a whole back end part of that you need to process, let alone our facility is CGMP, it's certified CGMP. So of course, we're set up to manufacture whatever we want to on a pharmaceutical scale to bring that product to the different, not only the U.S. markets and North American markets, but global markets as well as we further expand our supply chain.
Is it favorable to get approval for a DA license when you already have one approved by Health Canada? Does that help at all?
There's no bubble to fill. Hey, do you already have a Health Canada license, right? But at the same time, it's definitely healthy to show that we're already working within a mandated system, within a legal environment, and we already understand all the things that it takes to operate within that environment. So of course, like any government, personnel would realize that and hopefully feel more comfortable that Mydecine actually knows what they're doing. They're not trying to mess around here. They're not trying to, say that they're doing one thing and then do the other and, try to tap into the recreational market or anything like that. Everything we're doing is in a very controlled, strict environment, not only for the legal side of things, but also because psychedelics, separate to cannabis, there's a lot more risk and liability associated with that from a consumer point of view. A lot of people, as we know, you consume cannabis, you have the experience, it goes away, everything is fine. But for someone to have a psychedelic experience, especially for the first time, there's a lot of unknowns there. There's a lot of unpredictabilities. You can't just go and expect you to have a normal functional day, right? You have to really be set up. So that's why we're setting up all these different therapeutic protocols around how to actually do the integration around psychedelic therapy and pairing the medicine with the therapist or with the therapeutic protocols that makes sense so that, we actually have somewhat of a controlled area of research and focus around how we're trying to target this. So that's the other side of it, where cannabis, obviously there's a massive recreational market and it's thriving every day, where I think, the fact that we're starting off the psychedelic market, not just with mushrooms, but of course, all the other psychedelic medicines, whether it's, MDMA, whether it's LSD, whether it's peyote or mescaline, there's so many different types of psychedelic compounds that exist out there. But I think it's great that the whole industry, especially from a business point of view, is starting off on the right foot based off of R&D, scientific facts, education, and how to actually channel this through the right channels of whether this is a true pharmaceutical drug or it's done, in some type of controlled or safe environment versus it just being reckless and everybody kind of, has to figure it out on their own.
Exciting, isn't it? With all the stuff that's going on.
Yeah,
It's incredible when I listen to you, and it's just like every single small detail, like there's just strategy involved in everything that makes you sit back and just go, wow, there's a lot more to this than what I was thinking.
yeah, it doesn't let me sleep much, that's for sure. But it's okay. It's worth the sacrifice.
Yeah, of course.
So,
You spoke earlier, favorable
yeah.
cultivation conditions in Jamaica. One thing I wanted to bring up too was genetic editing mushrooms. This seems to be a popular question amongst consumers and investors. Many investors, as we know in the cannabis space and now the psychedelic, often ask the question if companies will concentrate on genetic editing mushrooms. Is this something you're considering? And if so, why?
Sure. Well, first off, I like to pin a little education around that. There's a major difference between genetic editing and GMO or genetic mutation, right? So genetic mutation is specific around mutating the plant with adding something foreign that doesn't normally exist within that life. That whether it's animal, plants, a mushroom, whatever it might be. So we're not doing any mutations, right? We're looking at the potential of genetic editing, where you're basically speeding up the process of cross-pollination or cross-hybridization of different species to get a maximum result of, in our case, the chemical output that these specific mushrooms could produce. So, as you know, Rob Roscow, my partner and CSO of Mydecine, he was the first scientist that we know of to successfully apply CRISPR, the genetic editing software, to cannabis to alter the chemical production in unique strains where we were producing back at Ebu, of course, now canopy growth. And although CRISPR might not really apply to the genetic editing of mushrooms per se, we still have the knowledge and in-house resources to tackle any type of genetic editing that we need to enhance the chemical production at a mushroom level. So once again, whether it's to increase the volume of production of psilocybin or psilocin, we could take psilocin and easily convert that to a synthetic psilocybin compound, or whether that's to increase all these other active compounds, like I said, that we're discovering in the both psychedelic and non-psychedelic mushroom species. We want to be able to have that input material found, through nature versus just synthetically producing that, because there's a lot of benefits to either side, right? So, like I said, because of the entourage effect, that doesn't come with the synthetic production of a molecule, that's developed in a test tube per se. Right. Where the magic, of magic mushrooms, there's some unknowns there that when you get psilocybin from a naturally derived source, there's a lot at play there that we're still defining from a pharmacology point of view, that has yet to be determined. So it's really interesting, and that's something that you cannot get from synthetic.
When you look at all this research that you're doing, the expansion, obviously, of the facility in Canada, revenue obviously is at the forefront of any company that is running from a publicly traded standpoint. So, wanted to ask, do you think Mydecine plans to keep its Canadian cultivation site as an R&D scale? Or do you think Mydecine scales up to increase volume for commercialization in the near future?
Another great question. Of course, we're always looking to find strong revenue streams once we go through all the proper channels over clinical trials, et cetera, and get approval from the FDA. But as the site is now, the scale is needed for a robust and comprehensive clinical trial production supply, around the world. Eventually as we get there. But right now, there's really no need for commercial scale until there's an approved product, to market. As I was saying, once we get through phase 3 trials. But being able to produce thousands of doses currently is adequate. As things progress in phase 3 clinical trials, the capacity will be expanded, and we'll be ready to meet the market need and the demand to collaborate with other research groups or whoever it might be. Maybe we're the direct feed supply for all these clinics that are popping up around the U.S. and all over the planet. They're going to need access to psilocybin. If they can get direct access, that's FDA approved. That's of course gone through the proper channels. It's CGMP certified, and it's the perfect product for the specific dosing that they need for their patients. And then we could pair that with the therapeutic protocols that we're also developing simultaneously. Then we could offer that package to the market as this becomes something that's normalized.